All right, let's tackle tonight's State of the Union address. The headliner will no doubt be this very resilient, let's call it very strong American economy. President Trump's sure to tout low unemployment, which has dropped dramatically since he took office. And he will likely mention the stock market, which has surged to record after record, gaining $10 trillion in market value over this past year. Now, he has avoided an economic downturn in this last half of his first term. People were talking about it, remember, a quarter or two ago, but hasn't come out. But growth has slowed lately after the pickup in 2018 as the effect of his tax cuts, the GOP tax cuts, wears off. Bankrate senior economic analyst Mark Hamrick and Axios market editor Dion Rabouin are here to talk about what he needs to say tonight, how he needs to spin this great story forward into the coming year. Mark, what does he need to say?
Well, I think he takes credit for the strength of the U.S. economy. That's the theme we hear. There's going to be the great American comeback. It feels a little like mission accomplished to me, so I think we want to be careful with that, because as a president seeking re-election, you want to ask the American public to give you permission to serve another 4 years. So obviously, a number of different proposals are going to be at least alluded to in this speech to give Americans a reason to want him to come back. Obviously, as you point to the fact that we have unemployment at 3.5%. He can claim some credit from that, and I think we all fully expect him to do just that.
Okay, and you say he needs to talk about, you said he might allude to.
Yeah.
Dion, would you say he needs to blurt out some hard and fast plans, whether it be infrastructure or healthcare tonight?
Yeah, no, I definitely think he's going to talk about that tax cut. I think that's going to be one of the big things. Treasury Secretary Mnuchin has kind of put that out to the folks and really kind of teased it a little bit. Infrastructure spending, it's unlikely we'll get either of those things, with the Senate being where it is and the House being what it is. But there's certainly things that President Trump can put forward and say, these are the things I want to do. These are going to help my economic agenda into the next 4 years, and try to get the American people on board. There's not really a lot that he can realistically do at this point, because it's really a lot on Congress. He's kind of stretched things, particularly with the bailout for America's farmers, about as far as they can go. So I'm very interested to see what he has to say.
We remember back in the day when Republican presidents like Ronald Reagan talked about, decried the debt and the deficit. We got a $23 trillion debt.
23.2, Liz.
23.2.
23.2.
He's right. I just looked down. 23.2 trillion. And Mark, now we've got a deficit of 1 trillion. That means the tax revenue that's coming in is not enough to cover the spending of the government that's going out. Does he even touch that?
I don't think he can, Liz. And, we know that he has put out the idea that perhaps we will go after entitlement spending in the next term. But that's the third rail of American politics. And we do not have the environment in Washington where both sides can come together and, in a sense, give the other side permission to work through a process like that, even though entitlement reform to shore up Social Security, to make sure that promised benefits are provided. We don't have both sides coming together on that, so I don't know how the president really tries to get ahead on that issue here.
Yeah, Liz, I got to tell you, I don't think he's going to touch that entitlement reform thing with a 10-foot pole. If I was him, I would stay away from it, and I'm sure his advisors are telling him the same thing.
Yeah, you know what? I get it, but at some point, somebody has got to discuss the debt and the deficit, but we just did. I don't know if anybody's listening to DC.
Right here.
Finally, the president gave a rousing speech in Davos, but it was very America-centric. Now, he ticked off all of these great numbers that have been so strong, whether it's unemployment or the economy, et cetera. But, Dion, I finally have to ask you, he loves to talk about the greatest hits, and who wouldn't? But does he need to make some promises that he hasn't done before?
Well, I think right now, top of mind for a lot of folks out there is this coronavirus. I just heard on the way here that we had a case here in New York City. You've got deaths happening outside of China right now. So that'll be interesting, because it could have a very significant effect on the economy and could even hit the U.S. economy in a notable way. So be interested to see what he says about that. Also interested to see if he retakes aim at the Federal Reserve and Jay Powell, the guy he picked. He's really done a serious number hammering Jay Powell on the economy, saying it would be 10 times what it is if he weren't in place. The stock market would be 10 times higher. We'd have 10,000 more points on the Dow. I wonder if he turns and starts to push that button again while he's taking this victory tour, or if he just stays on the positive?
I don't know. Do you really want to mention Jay Powell, especially considering that the Fed paused and then cut, Mark?
Well, I wouldn't have suggested that he target the Fed in the first place. I think the Fed made its own decision to cut rates 3 times, and Jerome Powell obviously doesn't want to be part of that conversation. To go back to the earlier point, though, Liz, I think the president will engage on one of the major issues that Americans are looking to Washington to tackle, and that is health care. Obviously, the Democrats are playing that issue very high in their agendas.
Boy, I hear a lot of people say, you know, anecdotally, I can't afford this or I couldn't pay for that and I'm desperate. So that is very important for a lot of Americans. Mark Hamrick, Dion Rabouin, great to see you both. Thank you so much.